If You Have Nightmares, We'll Dance on the Bed by Lefay Strent. Chapter 2. It was easy to blend into the shadows and slink around unnoticed. The humans actually thought they were safe here, their guard too lax even in the frenzy left behind after the king and queen were murdered. To be fair, no Fae had been crazy enough to step foot into the capital city, let alone the castle. Virgil imagined Remus and Deceit and all the others snickering at him for thinking they were actually serious, for being so concerned as to take the initiative and come here himself. What am I even doing? Virgil questioned himself, holding his breath as a couple of castle servants drifted by. Humans failed to look up enough, so they never spotted him clinging to the ceiling. This was too easy. Virgil's paranoid mind screamed at him that his luck would run out. If the other Fae didn't show up tonight, then surely the staff would eventually find him and kill him. Virgil wouldn't even blame them, really. He was trespassing where he shouldn't. But he's just a boy, Virgil thought. Or that's what he'd heard anyway. The queen had given birth to a son just a handful of summers ago. He couldn't be that old. And Fae did love children the best. Virgil grit his teeth at the thought of the others getting hold of the little prince. If Virgil were going to die for anyone but himself, this seemed the way to go. It didn't take too much effort for him to find Thomas's room. The boy was inside, already asleep. His tiny form was curled in on itself, making a tiny ball at the corner of the bed. Virgil tilted his head to the side. What a small life for everyone to make such a racket about. The night was quiet so far, and Virgil had no faith in the guards stationed down the hall. If other Fae were coming, then it was up to Virgil to spot when they appeared. So Virgil resigned himself to hunkering down and waiting the night out. Wouldn't it be something if none of them showed up at all? How many nights would Virgil linger here just to ensure one human child's safety? A child who, if he so much as took one look at Virgil, would scream his head off in terror. Not that the kid knew how much Virgil cared. It was his instinct to be scared of something more powerful than him. Virgil would scream too if it had been him. Virgil sighed as the hours drug on. He began to think he'd overreacted coming here. Of course, that's when it all went to hell. Only Virgil's vigilant senses saved them. No enemy really showed themselves exactly. There was nothing to see or hear, nothing but a mere shift in the atmosphere, the feeling of a fuse burning out, and Virgil was snatching Thomas out of the bed. He flung the door open just as the whole room exploded. Cradling Thomas protectively in his arms, Virgil launched out of the bedroom and into the hallway, zooming out of the smoke. Thomas coughed and wheezed and yelped in fright. He struggled in Virgil's iron grip. Virgil didn't let the boy catch his breath, nor did he pause to explain himself or what had just happened. He raced down the grand corridors, ignoring the way the child pushed against his chest. Thomas must have realized that Virgil was a Fae. He had to have. Virgil hadn't bothered to hide his features, and the slightly glowing, multicolored eyes were a dead giveaway. A scarce percentage of humans could wield magic, but Thomas stared up at Virgil with startled eyes that knew him for what he was. But that was only from Virgil's perspective. After a time, the hummingbird heartbeat slowed down to something more manageable. The walls blurred past as they raced down the halls and ducked into rooms. The squirming ceased, not that Virgil noticed. He kind of had bigger things to worry about than the child who had become oddly quiet in his arms, like keeping them both alive. Admittedly, Virgil didn't really have a plan. Mostly he just focused on keeping Thomas away from Remus and Deceit. That explosion, that had to have been Remus. He adored the flashy, destructive approach. Both him and Deceit were here. Others too, maybe. The other Fae had finally arrived, and Virgil was toting around a giant target. As castle guards ran around in a flurry after hearing the explosion, Virgil avoided them by jumping around them. The humans weren't prepared for his speed, and their reaction time cost them. They only saw a determined blur dart over and through their formations. Virgil thought Thomas would start hollering again once he saw the other humans, but for some strange reason he just kept staring up at Virgil. Even when the guards realized at some point that a Fae had hold of their prince and everyone promptly freaked out, Thomas didn't. After dodging another unit of guards, Virgil sped down the halls until he came to a quiet area. He found some sitting area with large windows overlooking the gardens. Virgil honestly had no clue where he was in the castle. Should he jump out the window, or would that leave them vulnerable? Virgil looked down at the tiny life he held in his arms. He'd never been this close to a human before, let alone a child. Did all their children have such big brown eyes? He swallowed and told the kid, "I'm going to keep you safe, okay?" Thomas nodded, probably too scared to react more than that. Virgil tightened his hold. While his statement hadn't been a lie, he prayed it wouldn't turn into one. "Is there—" Virgil began, but stopped, trying to figure out the best course of action. "Is there someone here who knows magic? Someone who could keep you safe?" Thomas opened his mouth a little, hesitating. Virgil nodded encouragingly, hoping to convey through eyes alone that there would be no consequence for speaking. "There's Logan," Thomas answered softly. "He's a wizard." "Okay. All right. Where is he at?" I don't know." Thomas's voice faded into silence. He looked deeply troubled, small fingers gripping into Virgil's cloak. Hey, it's okay." Virgil choked in his attempt to tell Thomas it was okay. Nothing about this situation was okay. "You don't have to know. We can still find him, somehow." Thomas nodded again, but doubts lingered there. Virgil had no idea how to comfort him. He'd be better off looking for Logan the wizard. Maybe he could track a guard down and intimidate him into telling Virgil where Logan was? Wait, that'd probably scare Thomas too much. This was really a mess. Virgil turned away from the windows, ready to wing it and head off. Staying in one place for too long made him antsy, and for good reason, too. He could already hear a hurried set of footsteps coming down the hall. Virgil cursed under his breath and hid in the corner of the room. He thickened the shadows around them for extra security. In a whisper, he told Thomas to keep quiet, praying that the child would actually listen to him. Not long after, the footsteps came by them, and they stopped. They couldn't see their hiding spot. There was no way. Virgil could see the man, though, and recognized them for a human. He wore shaded spectacles despite it being the middle of the night and indoors. The rest of his attire was casual, although disheveled, like you'd thrown them on in a hurry. He cocked his head to the side as if to listen. The man's head turned, and Virgil swore his gaze must have been directed right at him. "You must think you're slick, hiding in the dark, but that doesn't really work on me, hon." Virgil stayed silent, hoping if he remained still long enough the human would reveal that they were just bluffing and move along. And since luck had never been on Virgil's side, the human wasn't bluffing. "I don't know who you are, but if you think you can kidnap a prince in his own castle and get away with it, you'd better think again." "Remy?" Thomas called out, squinting through the darkness. Virgil didn't know why he bothered trying to save a kid who was going to out them like this. "Hey, cuz, might want to cool it with the names. That's a fae holding you there." "Oh, sorry," Thomas apologized, which was kind of absurdly adorable enough to make Virgil want to snort. Thomas looked up at Virgil and patted his shoulder. "It's okay. That's my cousin. You can't play hide-and-seek with him. He's got magic eyes." "Magic eyes?" Virgil repeated. With all pretense of secrecy gone, he lowered the shadows around them. Remy the cousin stood before him, hands on hips. The stance was meant to exude confidence, but Virgil could see the slight tremble to his shoulders. Remy smirked. "I've actually met one of your kind before. Just the once." He raised his shades. Where eyeballs should be, there was only darkness. "Wasn't a very fun experience, I gotta say." Virgil shuddered. He could imagine what must have been done to the man. "It's all good, though," Remy said, replacing the shades on his nose. "Little bit of magic helps me feel out my surroundings. I've had a lot of time to get good at it." All Virgil could hear was Remy's underlying threat, that Virgil couldn't hide from him anywhere. It was an incredibly bold thing to say to a fae. Remy was lucky it was Virgil he was standing up to. "I have no interest in fighting you," Virgil said. He wanted to make that clear from the start before things got more out of hand. He didn't have much hope at being believed, but it was worth a shot. If he could somehow get Remy the cousin to show them where the wizard was, that'd be great. Or maybe, if Remy was a wizard himself, he would know protection spells? He was obviously inclined to magic. "Then who do you have an interest in fighting, then?" Remy asked, intentionally specific. "No one." Remy raised a brow. "So just run in and snatch the prince and get out? Gotta say, that's, not stylish at all, especially since I heard a big bang was set off towards Thomas's room. Now why would you go and make all that music if you wanted to skip out on the dancing?" "That wasn't me." Virgil tried his best not to growl out. They were wasting time. Remy froze. Virgil could hear his breath catch and his heart rate quicken. "So, there's more of you around, then?" "Yeah," Virgil admitted, because there wasn't any reason not to. In fact, it'd be better if the humans knew what they were dealing with. "I don't know how many, but there's a couple at least." Remy struggled to keep his cocky grin in place. The severity of what they were in the middle of was not lost on him. "And why are you all here?" Remy asked. Virgil considered if Remy actually cared for his answers or not. If anything, he was buying time for more humans to show up. If Remy was a wizard of note, he would have already attacked Virgil. Unless he feared for his cousin's safety, that is. They want to kill the prince. And what, you don't? No, I don't. Believe me or don't, but that's my answer. He saved me, Thomas piped up. Both of them turned to stare at the boy, both of them shocked for different reasons. Excuse me? Remy asked. I was sleeping, and then the room went boom. But what's your name? Remy looked absolutely horrified. Virgil must be crazy, because despite the fact that he was putting his life on the line at that very moment, he couldn't help but let his lips twitch up in a smirk. This kid was something else. You can call me Virg, he told him. Thomas continued on with his story as if he hadn't just asked a Fae outright for their name. Yeah, Mr. Virg carried me out. I don't think he's a bad guy. Remy sputtered. Honey, he's literally a Fae. I know we've gone over this before. Thomas poked his lip out in a pout. Yeah, but I don't think he's a bad one. He looked up at Virgil, and Virgil's breath caught at the trust in those wide eyes. Not all people are good. That means not all Fae have to be bad. Virgil felt a stirring in his chest. He whipped his head up to Remy, alarmed. Are all human children this trusting? He's a nice kid, okay? Remy said the word nice like it pained him. Virgil looked back to Thomas. You're too good for this world. Here, go to your cousin. Virgil sat him down on his feet. Thomas frowned in confusion. I'm not here to keep you, I just want to get you to safety. Remy stood there stiffly, hesitating, but he snapped out of it quickly and offered his hand out. Come over here, cuz. Come on. Thomas spared an uncertain glance toward Virgil before hurrying over to his cousin. His bare feet pattered on the stone floor, and Remy was swift to swoop him up in his arms. What, no tricks? Remy asked. Virgil shook his head. The kid mentioned there was a wizard here. If you know where to find him, I can escort you there. Remy let out a stunned laugh. You're actually serious? Well, I can't lie, you know. Remy bit his lip in contemplation. Thomas patted at his shoulder as if to reassure him. Just then the clinking of armor sounded, prefacing the arrival of one of the castle guards. Virgil cursed. How could he have gotten so distracted as to let someone get so close? Too soon, the guard rounded the corner, sword already drawn. Your Royal Highness! The guard huffed out. Patton! Thomas cheered, his arms already outstretched towards him. With that kind of reaction, and Thomas knowing the guard's name, he must have been somewhat close to the royal family. Cuz, what did I just say? Remy seethed, but then cut himself off abruptly, mouth hanging open. He stared at Patton as if just processing that another human had arrived. Either Remy must have feared for the guard's safety, or he was relieved for some backup. The guard brandished his sword towards Virgil, stepping forward. Take the prince and run! I'll hold this monster off! Virgil raised his hands. Listen, I'm not here to hurt him, I swear. Patton! He's good, I promise! Thomas called out. He was cut off by Remy clamping a hand over his mouth. Remy took a large step back from the guard. That's not Patton. Patton looked over at Remy, surprised and a bit hurt. What are you talking about? Of course I'm me. I can see what you really are, Remy said, inching away from the perceived threat. And you're not Patton. Patton looked at them pleadingly. While Thomas glanced between them in hushed confusion, Remy wouldn't budge an inch, jaw set as he stared Patton down. Remy seemed so sure of himself, just like when he knew without a doubt where Virgil was hiding. If this wasn't the Patton they knew, then that must mean... Deceit, Virgil announced, pointing at him. Patton's expression dropped into a slight scowl. His left eye burned gold. What gave me away? He asked. The face still resembled Patton's, but the voice deepened now, too smooth and with a faint hiss. I don't see with my eyes, Remy answered. He clutched Thomas tighter to himself, body tensing in preparation to make a run for it. They could never outrun a Fae, not unless Remy had some trick up his sleeve. Patton's face slipped into a sly smile. Pity you saw through my charade so soon. We could have done this the easy way. Guess you'll all just have to die, then. Virgil lunged before his opponent could. As he closed in, the face melted away to show the scales underneath.